Welcome to Chapel Sunday School, Lexington Baptist Church. And today we're going to begin the book of Numbers. Of course, you see right here on the screen. In Hebrew, it's called Bamidbar. Ba is usually in Hebrew means in. So what is Midbar? Midbar means wilderness. So Bamidbar, in the wilderness. And so why is it called Numbers? The Hebrews call it in the wilderness, Bamidbar. We call it Numbers because, I guess, because the first chapter has a lot of numbers in it. It's counting of the people, the tribes that came out of Egypt, and how many did they have that were of fighting age to be in the army to go to war. Ends up 603,550. But to call it Numbers, the whole book is not about numbers. It's about their journey in the wilderness. And if Exodus was more about the happenings of how they came out of Egypt and the plagues and then going to Mount Sinai and crossing the Red Sea, and getting the Torah, um, Numbers really um, gives an account of how disobedient the people became very quickly, and what happened as a result of their struggle with how to follow and be obedient to the Father. He tells them there are blessings for obedience, there are curses for disobedience, and that's what kind of in the wilderness Numbers is about. And of course, we attribute Numbers to be written by Moses. Probably there were a couple other people that were involved in giving us what we have today as the book of Numbers. Um, just like Deuteronomy, we say, well, it's all written by Moses. Mostly, it's a set of speeches Moses was giving to the children of Israel. But then it talks about his death and what happened, and so he obviously didn't write about his own death. And so, but we'll call Moses the author, basically, of Numbers. It was written sometime, we think, around 1450 to 1410 BC. Trying to come up with dates of things in the Old Testament is very difficult. Um, I was looking at this. Generally, I say that Mount Sinai, coming out of Egypt, the Ten Commandments, was 1,500 years prior to Jesus walking on this earth. And so when he sat down with the disciples for the Passover, his Last Supper, remember that the Jewish people had been doing that, keeping unleavened bread and having the Passover meal for 1,500 years. That seems so. You put it in relation to America is only a couple 250 years old. Well, you're talking about 1,500 years that the Jewish, and since, over the last 2,000 years, you've got 3,500 years back to God wedding himself to the Hebrew people. And why they're still around is amazing. It's a miracle in itself. They've been uh, so genocide has tried to happen from other countries towards Israel, disperse them, kill them, destroy them. The latest being World War II, 6 million Jews. And today, there are really only about 15 million Jewish people on the planet of that identifiable heritage. Of course, we know that the whole teaching of being what it means to be grafted into the people of God, that if we're in Christ, according to Galatians 3:29, we're in Christ, we're of the seed of Abraham and joint heirs according to the promise. So we're spiritual Israelites if you are a believer. But the key characters in this book, even though it's Numbers and has a lot of names in it, the first chapter, is basically about Moses and his brother Aaron, their sister Miriam, and then Joshua became the next leader after Moses died. But Joshua and Caleb together, you see what's so special about these two guys. They're the two that gave the good report of the 12 spies that went in to spy out the land. But because of the 10 spies giving out a bad report, an evil report, that's why they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. Eleazar is the son, one of the four sons of Aaron, and he became the high priest after Aaron died. Then there's Korah. He's a character that's in this book because out in the wilderness he led a rebellion against Moses. And then there's this character Balaam. Of course, there was a king associated with that, but you heard of, Balaam or Balaam, Balaam's donkey, and we'll get into that later on. But our God, Yahweh, is orderly. He's meticulous and accurate with numbers and design. He's purposeful. He's practical. He's family oriented, definitely, and he's fair. Yet has certain plans for some and certain other plans for others based on his will and his will alone. And he can do that because he is Yahweh. We're not to question that. A lot of times we look at stuff. Well, this isn't fair, God. Why does this person's life, and they're not even following you? They seem like they're so blessed. The rain falls on the just and the unjust, and what matters is when we stand before the judgment. But throughout our lives, because he is so orderly, we're created in his image. I think that must mean that we too have been given an implanted desire for our lives and our homes to reflect the same orderliness and purposeful design. Don't we all want our lives to be in order, not in disarray? We talk about getting your life in order, and people's like, my life's in chaos now. Need to get it in order. And well, there are rules, laws, the Torah, that give us boundaries, and we got decisions to make. And there's consequences to be experienced throughout our lives, lessons to be learned. If we make the wrong choice, we make a bad decision, there may be consequences to that bad decision, and we learn from those failures and move on, and grow. That's what this life journey is all about. Well, the book of Numbers is called Numbers because in the first chapter, all of these names are mentioned. And we look at this and say, oh my goodness, I don't recognize most of them, but you do recognize some of them. I have highlighted in green the 12 tribes. But if you were to count these, there's really 13 here because I've included Joseph. See, there's Joseph, his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. They were adopted, so to speak, by Jacob as if they were his own sons. And for the tribes that got land, Ephraim and Manasseh received land, and they're kind of representing Joseph because there's not a tribe of Joseph. You won't hear of as far as getting land. Now, in the book of Revelation, you do see Joseph named as part of the 144,000, but yet you don't see Ephraim. So Ephraim is kind of included here with Joseph because he was the youngest, but was selected by Joseph, by God, to be doubly fruitful. And but when you look at these names, it's interesting. If you know a little bit of Hebrew, every time we talk about Elohim, a lot of times I say, El is an abbreviation for Elohim. So take my name, for instance, Dan. My name is Daniel. You put the E in there, Daniel. Uh, Dan means judge. Dani would be my judge. Don is a judge. Dani is my judge. Put L on the end of it. My judge is God, Elohim. So you kind of see how that works with Reuben, the firstborn son of Jacob. Re'eh means to see or behold. So Reu Ben is the word for son. Reuben means see a son. Eli, there you see an L, Elohim, Eli. L-E, my God. Tur is a boulder, a big rock. My God is a rock, or God is our rock. Shador, or is the Hebrew word for light. Shed is kind of sounds away in English, to shed something, to spread it, the spreader of light. So it just goes on and on. Every one of these names has a deep meaning to them. Ben Yamin, Ben means son. Yamin is right hand, son of the right hand. Um, Manasseh's name, I don't know the Hebrew back there, but his name means causes to forget. That was Jacob's firstborn son. And he'd been through so much, being sold as a slave, been in prison, and yet he then is married to an Egyptian and has a son. It's like, thank you, this son, you're allowing me to forget all the bad things that happened in my past. Um, let's see, Ab. You see Abba, like Abba, Father. Ab, that's short for Abba. There's Eli, my God. My God is my Father. My God is Father. And so it goes on and on. Well, the reason I'm telling you all this is because somebody took it upon themselves to, in meditation and studying of these, they came up with stringing all of these names that have a meaning, take the meanings and string them together in a message. And this is what somebody came up with. Our Heavenly Father sent His only Son, Reuben, the rock of our salvation, to be the light of the world and to spread that light to everyone. To all that would Shema, listen and do His will, He offered His shalom, His peace, by the sacrifice of the rock of the Almighty, Yahusha, who came to earth to show us how to live and how to praise our Heavenly Father, Judah, obeying His Torah. He taught us that were not to listen to the enchanter, but that we were to give ourselves freely to Yahweh, and our reward given to us by God would be everlasting life. This gift of Yah's Son willingly came to earth, knowing that He would be brought low and become flesh so that He could reside with us. Yahweh is our strong Father, and He wants to add or give us His love, grace, and mercy in our lives. When we obey His words, He makes us Ephraim doubly fruitful and promises to Shema, to our prayers, and we will be a people set apart by His majesty for His purpose. He will cause us to forget, Manasseh, what the enemy has stolen from us, and reward us with His blessing when we choose to obey Yahusha, who was our ransom, the son of the right hand, Benjamin. And when our Father judges us, Daniel, He will see our righteousness because we have chosen to follow Messiah's footsteps. Messiah will defend us as a warrior. That's Gideon. Defend his people and lead us into the rightful judgments. We will all be heirs, brothers in the house of Yah, and we will be his people, filled with joy. It's no accident or coincidence that Yahushua came to teach us how to overcome the evil one who tries to muddle our thoughts into believing his lies. Messiah is the overcomer that defeated death, and through him we will do the same. Yah has sent Messiah to gather up his people, and he knows who they are. We no longer have to wrestle with the devil, but we are to surrender to the Father. Resist the devil, who will flee from us. We are not to follow our brothers that do wrong, but we are to have eyes to see and ears to hear the wonderful salvation message of our Father and walk in the footsteps of our Messiah. Wow, that I share this with you. You could go back and read it, make it a prayer. But somebody in their study um, meditated on all the meanings of the names of the people that are mentioned in the first chapter of Numbers and put that message together. So here we are, chapter 1. And Yahweh spake unto Moses in the wilderness, Bamidbar of Sinai, in the tabernacle of the congregation, on the first day of the second month, in the second year after they were come out of the land of Egypt. So the Israelites spent 1 whole year and 2 months at Mount Sinai. And he says, take ye the sum of all the congregation of the children of Israel, after their families, by the house of their fathers, with the number of their names. Now, this is interesting here because God is directing Moses to take a census by their families, by their fathers, and by their names. Every male by their polls from 20 years old and upward that are able to go forth to war in Israel. So they're fighting age. Thou and Aaron shall number them by their armies. Now, who else numbered their army among the children of Israel? Later on, we read about one who did this, but there was a big difference and another one that took a census. It was King David. Satan stood up against Israel and provoked David to number Israel. That doesn't sound good. Why did he do that? He put the thought in David's mind that if he knew the number of young men under his rule, meaning those fit for war, he could brag or boast about how great a king he was by the size of his army. God did not tell David to number, and he didn't number by name. He just took a number, sheer number of soldiers. Here, God is instructing Moses to take a census, and part of that is showing the history of how many came out of Egypt and how many were there as a result of their disobedience. Their numbers declined after plagues and disobedience. And with you there shall be a man of every tribe, every one head of the house of his fathers. Okay, because the fathers, the 12 sons of Jacob, they're dead, and they're dead and gone. But he says, God says, I want you to select a man of every tribe to represent that tribe by name. And these are the names of the men that shall stand with you. And note that the Levites aren't counted in this for warfare. They were the keepers of the tabernacle. And so here's the scriptures. Here's the 12 sons. And note here that of the children of Joseph, it says Ephraim and Manasseh. So Ephraim is counted in Manasseh to make your 12 that get land. The Levites didn't get land, and so here are the 12 that get land. But these names you don't recognize. I don't recognize this. Um, they're the ones that came and went in obscurity, but for a brief period of time in their lives, they represented the whole tribe. They were the leader of the tribe. And still, when you look at the meanings of the names, we just looked at Reuben means to see the sun. Elitzur means my God is a rock. The son of Shedur, shed his light. So names are just very, very important. I urge you to look up meanings of names and see what your name means. Now, they're well-known descendants of certain tribes. Some of these descendants of these tribes might people we wouldn't run across later on in the Bible, but there's some of them that absolutely do, and this is just a smidgen of them, of the tribe of Benjamin. We know there's King Saul. We know that Paul was a Benjamite. And I didn't know this, but I discovered it, reminded of it this last Wednesday. I'm doing a study on Esther. And Mordecai, Esther's cousin, um, it says in Esther that he was a Jew, which is a catch-all phrase, a quick catch-all word for all of the Jewish people. They're all called Jews. It kind of gravitated to that when the 10 tribes were taken away by the Assyrians, and we kind of lost touch with them. But in the southern kingdom, the tribe of Judah, because it was the biggest tribe, um, it was Judah, so they called them all Jews, whether they were of any tribe. But Mordecai, it says in Esther that he was a Jew of the tribe of Benjamin. And I guess it's kind of like saying, I'm a white guy, but I could say no more specifically, I have Irish descent, or something like that. Um, so there are catch-all words. This just came for convenience. So when you talk about Jewish people, you're really talking about a collection of people from different tribes. And some of these Jewish people may be able to identify, people today could very well be able to identify what tribe they came from. We'll talk about that in a minute. But of the tribe of Levi, you've got Moses and Aaron. They were Levites, keepers of the temple. Pinchas is another one we'll read about, study about. Of the tribe of Judah, well, that's a no-brainer. Who is the lion of the tribe of Judah? Yes, you've got Yeshua, Jesus. But also of Judah, you've got King David, you've got Solomon. This is why you have Mary and Joseph that went to Bethlehem for the census. They went back to the city of their origin because they were of Judah. Now, later, when the kingdom of 12 tribes gets divided and conquered, Judah and Benjamin, which comprised the southern kingdom called Judah, they stayed in the south. But the northern kingdom, which was called Israel, was made up of 10 other tribes, which has since become scattered and, quote, lost, taken away by the Assyrians that captured them and just kind of disbanded them. And these tribes are not lost to Yahweh, but they are dispersed. They're intermarried and not genetically identifiable. Now, the Assyrians assimilated these into their culture, and a lot of them ended up in Europe, in England, and guess where the Americans came from? You or I may very well be descendants of one of these 10 northern tribes. Quite interesting. In Revelation, you see the tribes again spoken of. Then I heard the number of those that were sealed. 100. You hear about the 144,000 from all the tribes of Israel that were sent out as evangelists in the end. And it says in Revelation 12,000 from each of these tribes. But here's where you see from the tribe of Joseph. Well, this is about the only place you see the tribe of Joseph called, because there was never a land of Joseph. And that's explained by Ephraim would be included in the tribe of Joseph, because here you have Manasseh separate, his two sons. Um, you have Ephraim associated with Joseph and Manasseh here. But in this list, where's the tribe of Dan? Um, which means judge. That's been a question. Many Bible scholars given different theories why. We can't really say why. Some reason in the Father's mind of the 144,000. I don't think that we need to jump to a conclusion that Dan is excluded or cursed or belittled in any way. Um, but he's not listed here, partly because Levi is listed. See, he didn't get land, but he's listed amongst the 144,000. Anyway, that's kind of a whole nother, that's a sidebar, just bringing that out. But these were the renowned of the congregation, the princes of the tribes of their fathers, those that were representative of the tribes, heads of thousands of Israel. And Moses and Aaron took these men, which are expressed by their names also, and they assembled all the congregation together on the first day of the second month, and they declared their pedigrees after their families by the house of their fathers, according to the number of names. See, all that's repeated. You've got the families, the fathers, and the names, 20 years old and upwards, by their polls, as Yahweh commanded Moses. So he numbered them in the wilderness, Bamidbar of Sinai. And which tribe of soldiers do you think was the largest? Um, if you go with the southern kingdom, uh, later on, that's why they're all called Jews. So it kind of makes sense. You could say Judah, and it was the largest tribe of the tribes. Which tribe of soldiers was the smallest? That's kind of a trick question, because this says which tribe that were not soldiers was the smallest in the population. Well, you know what that is. But the smallest of the soldiers' tribes was Manasseh. And his brother, younger brother, Ephraim, which means doubly fruitful, he is number of population of Ephraim was a lot more than Manasseh. Manasseh is the smallest of the tribes, and of course the smallest of those that in population that did not go to war, of course, was Levi. And so that's what's on this in the scriptures. I'm not going to read all of this, but basically you can see what's going on here in these verses 20 to 34. Just the numbers. Here's the 12 tribes. And just on this screen, you can look down here and you see the numbers. Boom. Wow, that's the largest. Kind of jumps out at you. It's the tribe of Judah. None of the others are in the 70,000s. They're all 30, 40, 50,000. Don't even see any 60,000 there. You've got one in the 60,000 here, the children of Dan. Why was it not included in that 144,000? We don't know. But here you don't see anything that is less than Manasseh was on the previous screen that had 32,000. And so these are those that were numbered, even all they were numbered 603,550. But the Levites, after the tribe of their fathers, was not numbered among them. But thou shalt appoint the Levites over the tabernacle of the testimony. And the children of Israel shall pitch their tents, every man by his own camp, and every man by his own standard. And this is what's interesting. Every man by his own standard. Where did these standards come from? What is this talking about? But the Levites shall pitch round about the tabernacle, and there be no wrath upon the congregation of the children of Israel. And the Levites shall keep the charge of the tabernacle and of testimony, the Ten Commandments. And the children of Israel did according to all that Yahweh commanded Moses, so did they. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about how they laid out the camp in the wilderness. They put the tabernacle in the center. The Levites are the caretakers of it, so their tents would be surrounding it. This is laid out north, south, east, west, like we're used to seeing. To the east is the camp of Judah, and it comprised the uh, the largest number, really 186,000 made up this camp. The second largest camp was up here, 157,000. The next one was this one down here, the 151,000, Camp of Reuben. But interesting, opposite of the largest camp is the smallest camp, which was only 108,000. And here's where you had Benjamin and Manasseh and Ephraim. Now, what's interesting about this, when you explore this a little more, east, Kedem. East has a meaning of former, ancient, before, or old, but it also carries a meaning of forward or everlasting. You know, that which is ancient is everlasting. And so, but this forward movement, that's why the tabernacle faces east. East is the direction that, that when they would start out and move to another location, those that were facing east would go first. They'd travel, 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 and they'd set up the tabernacle, and they would set their tents up on the east. As the lightning comes from the east in prophecy, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. Now, south, it's a Hebrew word that stems to Yamin, which we say like Ben Yamin, son of my right hand. By his right hand, behold a son who has heard the cry of his people and comes to redeem, is coming again with a troop as a captain of the host. That phrase is taken from the meaning of Gad, Simeon, and Reuben. And then you've got to the west. Yam is also, it's the Hebrew word for sea, but it's been associated with the west also because when you think about the land of Israel, what was to the west as far as they knew? Of course, the Mediterranean Sea. So Yam is the word for sea. Yam Suf means reed sea, sea of reeds. So Yam, sea, and west. And so we are brought out, here's based on these names, we are brought out of the sea, which stands for chaos. The son of the right hand, Benjamin, who cleanses us from all sin, brought us forth out of sin in order for us to be doubly fruitful. That's Ephraim in righteousness, causing us to forget. That's Manasseh, the hardships that he remembers our sin no more. Then lastly, there's the camp to the north, which is Saphon. Saphon means to conceal or treasure, to hide. Blessed are those who are found to be hidden in the judge who wrestles for us. Blessed are they who overcome in the judge. There's the tribe of Dan, means judge, and are hidden in him. So, continuing with looking at the layout of this camp. I'm going to spin it a little bit where north is to your right. East is now this way, kind of looking at where you've got the lion down here at the bottom. The lion of the tribe. Now, what is this lion and man and ox and eagle? Because they were to stand by their standards. Each tribe had a banner or a standard, but these groupings of tribes had a standard. Where does this come from? The lion, the man, the ox, and the eagle. This comes from Ezekiel. In the 30th year, as I was among the exiles by the river Kebar, the heavens were opened, and I saw visions of God. As for the appearance of their faces, the forehead had the face of a human. There's a man. A face of a lion. Here he is in the front. The face of an ox, that back there on the back. And the face of an eagle. In this vision, Ezekiel saw four faces, a man, a lion, an ox, and an eagle. These four faces were the ensigns of the four tribes, the four main tribes. And so what's interesting about this, someone found this out, and I saw this. There are four faces. These four faces represent the four sides, so to speak, of the person of Jesus Christ. What do we mean by this? Someone pointed out, that in the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus Christ is figuratively portrayed with the face of a lion. He's the Lion of Judah in Matthew. He's the Messiah of Israel. He's the King of Kings. His majesty is all in Matthew. In Mark, Christ is portrayed much more like a servant with the face of an ox, a servant. In Luke, he's portrayed as a man, the second Adam. In John, he's portrayed with the face of an eagle, the Son of God. And so quite interesting that someone made that analogy there. But getting back to these standards, every man of the children of Israel shall pitch by his own standard with the incense of their father's house far off about the tabernacle, the congregation shall they pitch. So they're not to be too snuggled up against the tabernacle. They've got to kind of set their tents away from. And so those standards, you can see even today, you talk about family crest. Maybe you don't know much about your family crest or your what's called a coat of arms sometimes. You can delve into ancestry.com or truthvids.net symbols. Um, um, there's names of crests or something like that website, but you can see, and it's easier to see in some names than others. But if your family crest includes a lot of pictures of lions in it, it might just be that there's some historic connection to Judah. The harp, because David's harp is connected in the symbols for the coat of arms or the crest. Some people say, well, what's the difference between coat of arms and crest? Um, some say, well, there's no difference. It's just two words mean the same thing. I saw somewhere where specifically the crest would refer to the top of the coat of arms, the top part of the coat of arms. So some of these that doesn't look like there's anything different. Now, I just saw this one and put this up as an example in the coat of arms or crest of the name Benjamin. You see a wolf, and so the wolf is been associated with the tribe of Benjamin. Um, I looked up the Williams family crest and the Emmanuel, Julie's family. And both of these have a lion in there. Of course, her maiden name, Emmanuel, that is definitely a Hebrew name. She very likely is of a Hebrew Judah descent. Williams, our name, our people come from, the European, England, Scotland, Wales, Irish, but yet still maintain. I don't know how far historically it goes back with the line. Maybe there's a connection to Judah there. Can't say. Uh, the tribe of Issachar, I'm showing you this one because my Saturday Torah study that I do, we call it Issachar Oasis. And I later discovered that Issachar is, well, we kind of knew this, that Issachar was named because they understood the times who knew what Israel should do, or the people of Issachar, the tribe of Issachar, were men who understood the times and what we should do. And our Bible study group is very interested in prophetic and last days and those kinds of things. But then I found out also when Jacob was blessing his 12 sons, he came to Issachar and he said, "You are a strong donkey lying down between the sheepfolds." What does that mean? It sounds like something good, strong donkey. A donkey's a beast of burden, but a servanthood is something. But we kind of realized that for our Bible study group here, we're kind of a go-between in between, um, the traditional church and the Jewish people, the Messianic. And that's kind of our journey over the past 15 years to be like a bridge of here, serving in a Southern Baptist church and yet seeking to share the gospel with Israel, with the Jewish people, or those that are returning to the Torah and the ancient ways. So that's kind of a good description of Issachar. Here is just showing you the coat of arms for Issachar. You see the donkey in every one of these. Now, this next part I'm going to kind of fly through because it is a very technical, just specific numbering and how they numbered in the camp of Judah. And there's the number, and it goes through each one of these tribes with the numbers and the people that were associated with the fathers of that tribe, and speaks about the Levites. There's Ephraim and Manasseh. Um, there's Dan, 62,000, second largest tribe. And so the total number was 603,550. But note, he was verse 33 of chapter 2. The Levites were not numbered as Yahweh commanded, because this is only for soldiers. And the children of Israel did according to all that Yahweh commanded. So they pitched by their standards, and so they set forward. Like every time they moved, they would go out start from the easternmost group, Judah, according to the house of their fathers. Now, someone came up with this, another thing that's interesting to look at. Um, it's some symbolic thing that might have some meaning for us. But if you lay out the camp by numbers, the percentages, what do you have here? You can say, oh, that looks like a cross. And artists have gone on to draw things like this. I really highly doubt that they made sure that they were keeping nice, neat rows to make sure that they laid themselves out in the shape of a cross. But it just simply is interesting to note, percentage wise, that the East, the largest, Judah, had 31%, and on the opposite side, the smallest, had 18%. This side had 26%, and this side had 25%. Oh, someone noticed that you could say the same for our imagery of a cross. Um, and someone said, well, this isn't symmetrical. You got 26 over here and 25 here. And someone came up, well, that's explained because the heart is slightly left. If someone were on this cross with their arms stretched out, their heart would be to their left a little bit here, which would make it more the center of the, well, I guess it would, yeah, depending on which way you're looking, if someone's facing it or not facing it. But just something to note, kind of interesting. We're looking for, see, part of this diagram, when you do a study on finding Jesus in the Old Testament, this is kind of one of the pebbles that you might find in that bucket, truckload of stones that give evidence to where's Jesus in the Old Testament. The tribes were laid out around the tabernacle somewhat symmetrically as a cross. Take it for what you will. Someone else, I don't know who came up with this, research has tried to determine where these, and there are different clues about this. Serpent, that the Danube River is a serpentine river, and it goes up and moves up into these areas. And so they've tried to determine what countries may have been recipients of some of these. Of course, Judah is still basically remaining in Israel, but includes royal lineages, Ireland, Scotland, and England. And so there was a lot of migration of the Jewish people all over the world. And like we said, the United States could be Ephraim and Manasseh. Ephraim, British Commonwealth. Well, the British came to America. And, oh, you can't see behind my picture here. Um, the symbol for Manasseh is an olive branch. And it just so happens there's the olive branch in the United States symbol. This was symbolized, we want peace, but we're ready to fight if need be. Um, so that's just kind of an aside as well for these tribes. I'm going to leave you with this great song, one of my favorite songs now. Um, a lot of uh, videography is being done with drones. This video represents some of the most creative, wonderful example of drone videography that makes this is a wonderful song to watch. But look at also the translation. It's all in Hebrew. You'll see the translation at the bottom. The song is called Bamidbar, in the wilderness. And it's a group of Christian young people well, they're Jewish, they're believers in Messiah. And so their song is about, we've been called out in the wilderness, but we're expecting and looking for his return. And if we suffer, we suffer. If there can be no victory without a war, but you will go with us, God, through this, and you're calling us from all walks of life. So just enjoy this song, Bamidbar, and I'll see you next week.
אלוהי השמיים הוא יצליח לנו, אנחנו עבדה, נקום ובנינו, אין מקום לפחד, אין זמן לבזבז. במדבר, קול קורא כאן במדבר, סוללו לו דרך, ישרו לו מסילה, הרימו כל מכשול, הנה הוא כבר בא, העירו כל ישן, הזמן להתעורר. במדבר, קול קורא כאן במדבר,
כולנו מחכים בציפייה שתתגלה לנו במלוא כבודך, אז ישמעו כי אדוני דיבר.
במדבר, קול קורא כאן במדבר, במדבר, קול קורא כאן במדבר. אלוהי השמיים, הוא יצליח לנו, אנחנו עבדה, נקום ובנינו, אין מקום לפחד, אין זמן לבזבז. במדבר, קול קורא כאן במדבר, סוללו לו דרך, ישרו לו מסילה, הרימו כל מכשול, הנה הוא כבר בא, העירו כל ישן, הזמן להתעורר. במדבר, קול קורא כאן במדבר, כולנו מחכים בציפייה שתתגלה לנו במלוא כבודך, אז ישמעו כי אדוני דיבר. במדבר, קול קורא כאן במדבר, כולנו מחכים בציפייה שתתגלה לנו במלוא כבודך, אז ישמעו כי אדוני דיבר. במדבר, קול קורא כאן במדבר, במדבר, קול קורא כאן במדבר, במדבר, קול קורא כאן במדבר, במדבר, קול קורא כאן במדבר. במדבר, בערבה, בהרים ובשפלה, קול קורא גם ברמה, כל מפרת השממה. בבתים וברחובות, בימים ובלילות, בחדרי החדרים וגם על גגות גבוהים. במדבר, בערבה, בהרים ובשפלה, קול קורא גם ברמה, כל מפרת השממה. בבתים וברחובות, בימים ובלילות, בחדרי החדרים וגם על גגות גבוהים. במדבר, קול קורא כאן במדבר, כולנו מחכים בציפייה שתתגלה לנו במלוא כבודך, אז ישמעו כי אדוני דיבר. במדבר, קול קורא כאן במדבר, ואם חלקנו הוא לסבול אז בשמחה, ואם להילחם באהבה, בחיים אין ניצחון בלי מלחמה. במדבר, קול קורא כאן במדבר, במדבר, קול קורא כאן במדבר, במדבר, קול קורא כאן במדבר, במדבר, קול קורא כאן במדבר.